I just want to thank you all for joining us this evening for Corporate Hair, where authenticity meets executive presence. Couple of things before we get started. One, if you would please make sure your cell phones are on vibrate because we're recording, so we want to make sure we have some good quality video for this. Two, I'm not that super formal, so this is not an uptight, like super formal thing, so you guys like relax. Please eat this food. There actually is some chicken from Smoky John's on the way, so make sure when that does arrive, you guys get some of that, but I'm not taking that food home. So y'all make sure, get up as you feel necessary, get some food. We're just here to have a good time tonight. I had some technical difficulties, but you guys know how that goes, and we're just going to roll through it, and I'm going to make it work. So you guys, I appreciate your patience and bearing with me in advance. So what I want to go ahead and do, because again, it's Monday night, so I appreciate you guys being here with us, and I want to be a steward of your time. So I want to do a quick introduction to why we're here tonight, introduce our panelists, and then we're going to get right into it. So first, let me introduce myself. I am Candra Sweat. I am the founder of Everyday Executive. I'm also a mindset coach, and my mission is to free everyday hardworking people or those that are wanting to go into entrepreneurship from the bondages of a fixed mindset and empower them and equip them with the tools to lead from wherever they are. So whether you're a janitor, an accountant, whatever the case may be, all of us need to be the leaders of our own lives first before we can lead anyone else. So that's my everyday role, but I also am just an advocate and supporter of diversity and inclusion, especially in employee resource groups. I personally am a product of a powerful employee resource group, and so I just continue to advocate for them, speak with them, speak to them, and so sometimes things in the diversity and inclusion space kind of touch my soul, and I feel like we should speak on it, and that's why we're here tonight. So corporate hair, the story behind this actually is really, we're talking about the acceptance of black hair in the workplace. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to accomplish. One, I want to empower black professionals that want to embrace their authentic selves, the way that God created us and our hair grows out of their head. I want to encourage them and empower them to wear their hair even if they're in a corporate environment, not feel like they have to straighten their hair or wear their hair from a straightened state in order to be considered professional. The other thing is it was very important for me to promote inclusion because I feel like all too often we have conversations that impact us amongst ourselves, and we don't invite others to the table. So we don't, take the opportunity to educate them on what the challenges are so that they can know and be better allies for us and advocate for us and just understand. So that's why we're here tonight. This is empowerment. It's, I have my notes. Kim, my friend Kim from LinkedIn here, she shared the event, and she said something great about, having challenging conversations. And it is a challenging conversation, and especially when you do it in a mixed audience, but it doesn't have to be a horrible situation. It's just something where, we have to tackle it, and together we can conquer any challenge. So that's the whole point of tonight. And I have a great, diverse group of panelists here that I'm so super excited about. So I'm going to just give a super quick introduction on who they are. You will receive an electronic program with all of their information and their full bios in case there's another opportunity for you to connect with them in some other space. But first, I will start down at the end with Miss Ashanti. Or no, actually, Stacy's at the end. Sorry, Ashanti, I thought you were at the end. And I had Stacy up first. So Stacy Givens is the PMO Director of Lab Operations at Essilor. I met Stacy at an Employee Resource Group event at McAfee, and she was just a spectacular person and had a beautiful head of locks and just wonderful executive presence. So I had to have her on this panel. The next to her is Miss Ashanti, and Ashanti Titus. Actually, and I see, hi, Jonathan. Hey, so Jonathan Jones, he actually facilitated this connection. I posted my event. He tagged Ashanti. Ashanti actually is an executive producer of Natural Hair, the movie, and I'll be sharing a clip with you guys from that. So it was of course she had to be on the panel. It only made sense. So thank you, Ashanti, for being here this evening. And then we have Ashley Ridgway Washington. She is the System Executive Director of Human Resources at Christus Health. Ashley, I'm a member of the DFW Urban League Young Professionals Organization. If you're not familiar with us, come get to know us, we're great. And Ashley is on the board, and that's how I got to know Ashley, and she was just an awesome person from the jump, and I was like, I have to do something with her. She has great perspective and insight. Next to her is Kevin. And I love Kevin because he doesn't mind being that one white guy. So people saw the flyer, they were like, what is this again? What are we talking about? But Kevin Muscat is a partner at Ernst & Young, or EY, in transaction advisory services. So he handles mostly mergers and acquisitions. But he is also the executive sponsor of the Black Professionals Network there and a big supporter of the cause. So Kevin's a great person to know. And then we have Mr. Herbert Smith. Herbert Smith is a strategic marketing consultant for McClatchy. Herbert Smith is the president of the DFW Urban League Young Professionals Organization. And I told Herbert, I was like, you have to be on the panel because you have locks. And I know that locks is a challenge for when it comes to a professional or corporate environment. And he, to me, is like, he just is, when I look at authenticity meets executive presence, like he has it all. So I was like, you have to be on here. You're welcome. So now, so I want to share with you guys, again, we're here to have fun. I want you guys to connect with each other. Share your experience on social media, #CorporateHair19, #EverydayExecutive. And we're going to take a moment right now. I'm going to share with you this little clip before we get into our discussion.
Black hair has actually defined Black womanhood in a lot of ways across this experiment called the United States.
It was a weekend like none other for our very own Demetria Obalor. A Facebook post ignited a serious conversation worldwide.
The controversy is coming from people who aren't too happy with the way that I look on television, saying, oh, her body is too big for that dress, or she's too curvy, or her hair is unprofessional, it's crazy, we don't like it.
So I really want organizations to understand that natural hair is much larger than you may think, and that there are unintended consequences and or landmines that you could be stepping on when you try to develop policies that prevent or constrain how people wear their hair.
7-year-old Lamaya Cameron showed us last week how she was playing with her hair when her first grade teacher at Congress Elementary cut one of the braids with his scissors.
She told me to stop playing with it and then cut it off and send me back to my desk.
The state of Texas sent me a letter saying, we heard that you're braiding and you can't braid. I look around and there's 7 cops standing in the shop ready to cart me off like a common criminal.
And this is why I'm natural.
I was wondering, can I touch yours?
My hair.
Yeah.
You wanna touch my hair.
Yeah.
Why?
It looks so interesting.
I always have white people, can't touch it, it's so pretty. Black women did not used to be the standard of beauty. So we had to wrestle a lot. We had to fight our way up to say what we have is beautiful.
Hair used to reflect consciousness. And so anybody with an afro, you indeed felt that they were conscious.
I've never met any man who's ever been like, I hate your hair.
I love a woman with natural hair, first and foremost. I prefer it.
Perms are gonna end up in the Black Art Museum, as my friend said. Like, nobody's doing perms anymore. I think most people are trying to be natural, even if they're gonna have straight hair.
All right, yeah, isn't that great? So, and Mr. Reginald Titus, Ashanti's husband, who produced that film, is back there in the back. So I'm so proud to have them as a part of this event. And when they reached out and I had the opportunity to view the full movie, I'm like, okay, we have to have you in even more greater capacity with this. So it's absolutely great. So getting right into it. First, I did have an icebreaker, so I kind of skipped over it, but I want to go back to it. So since we're talking about hair, and that way you guys can kind of get to know the panelists' personalities a little bit better, I wanted to ask you guys, let me step around so I can see all y'all. Have you ever had a hair fantasy? So is there any type of hairstyle that if you could have worn at any point in your life, any kind of hairstyle, what would it have been? Like, for example, Kevin, I could have totally see you wanting to rock the Rick James, like the braids and the beads. I could see that on you. So, but starting with Stacy. Stacy, did you ever have like a fantasy hairdo that you're like, if I could wear that, I would?
I would say maybe a blondish look. So when Mary J. she was wearing red and she had the blonde, y'all know what I'm talking about? See, I see that. She had the blonde bob. I would rock that.
Okay, very good. Ashanti, what about you?
I would say just really big, long hair with no product or anything and just wear it out.
Big fro, like natural hippie type thing going on. Yeah, long.
So I absolutely wanted that salt and pepper asymmetric with the print on the side.
Of course you did.
In fact, my older sister had it. My mother was like, no, ma'am, you're 7. We're not going to be cutting your hair like that.
Okay. Kevin, what about you? No, Rick James, mullet?
Does this apply to me?
Yes, it does. Nothing.
Really just I mean, kind of like this, but maybe a little bit shorter.
He does have a great head of hair. Yeah.
I mean, I've got the white privilege, so I can wear my hair however I want, right?
Oh, wow.
So.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted locks for the longest time. So now I've kind of grown into that. Besides this, it would be the old school Bobby Brown Gumby with the slant and my name etched in the side.
Wow. You're on a whole
just so
nother
they
level.
know it's real.
Yeah, that's great. Well, for me, when I thought about this, I thought about the question. I was watching the movie. Have any of you, and I doubt it, has anyone in here seen The Unicorn Store? You're my spirit animal. Yes, thank you. I knew nobody would watch that. We are one. So in that movie, Samuel L. Jackson is actually in the movie, and yes, he's my hairspiration. He has a fro, y'all, wrapped with rainbow shiny twine. And it's just glitter unicorn. And I was like, I'm gonna have to go to like Afro Punk or Coachella so I can wear something like that. But I'm telling you, yes, Samuel L. Jackson has a rainbow kind of unicorn store. Watch it. We can do a watch party. I'm here for it. But yeah, so getting into it, the first thing I want us to talk about really is just to understand what is the big deal. Because I know for some people, they don't understand the challenges that African Americans face in certain environments when it comes to our hair, and that it's even an issue. So I'll start with Ashanti on this one. Ashanti, when did you first realize that black hair in the workplace was an issue?
When I decided to go natural. So I was getting a perm from 12 to 22. After we had our first child, my hair started shedding, and I never linked it to the perm. So I decided to go natural. I did the big chop. Normally had long hair, chopped it to like 3 inches. I had a contract, and somebody came in the next day. Work was the same. They decided to end it early. And somebody pulled me aside. They were just like, you should have consulted me first before you changed your hair. And then there was another time, like after a couple of years working in the oil and gas industry, someone asked me earlier, she asked me, do you think it's industry specific? I think so, with my experience. I had an older white lady come up to me and say, you know, you really look more sophisticated when you straighten your hair. And that's when I was like, whoa, I was like 23, 24 years old. I didn't know how to respond, what to do. And I just I wasn't there long. So, and that's because I decided to bow out. So that's when I realized there was an issue. I had no idea until I experienced that.
Yeah. Stacy, what about you?
Honestly, I really haven't had experiences with questions about my hair. If anything, it has been more growing up. So I'm from Oregon, and when I was probably in the 7th grade, and that was the first time I had my hair braided. I go to school, and I was called Whoopi for an entire year because my hair was braided. So that was my first experience with which one of these is not like the others, right? So Stacey, you look different than you looked yesterday, and now you become the joke. Because at that time, Whoopi Goldberg was, she wasn't who she is today. Right. And so it was offensive, like, wow, really? Mm-hmm. So that was really my first experience with being, I would say, singled out or ridiculed or put down for looking different. Yeah. But from a corporate perspective, It's more around people asking, kind of like in your film, can I touch your hair? That seems to be more of an interest. I had coils at one point before I locked, and I was just sitting there playing with them, and my manager reached out. I thought, oh, hold on, let's not do that. To touch them, because she was just so enamored with what I was doing. I didn't realize they were so long, and I'm like, this is not an opportunity to handle someone's hair, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like touching someone's hair is akin to touching a pregnant woman's belly. That is not something you do. It's personal space.
Yeah, got it. Ashley, you got a take on this one?
So, this is the real first kind of ridicule that I got about my hair wasn't from white people. Mm-hmm. It was actually from my own people, and it was as a child. As you guys can tell, I'm really fair, and until adulthood, my hair was blonde. It was also down my back, and so I had a mother who was corporate forward. I got my hair straightened every Thursday my entire life, and so I wore very straight, Shirley Temple curls and these kind of straight press styles. And so it was always, well, you think you're cute because you're light skinned and your eyes are light and your hair is long. And so I really came to have some disdain for this long hair. I'm like, this is ridiculous. The other kind of thing that went on was that because I had long hair, my mother was not for extensions. And I grew up in an era where girls were wearing, French rolls and buns. And so I really wanted to do those things. And it wasn't until I got much older that I was able to do that. So really my first negative experience around hair was not from people who didn't look like me. It was from people who looked like me, which was interesting, right? I will tell you, I'm going to say something that's probably pretty provocative, but I want it to be said.
Say it.
I honestly think light-skinned black women get away with things in the workplace from a hair perspective that my brown-skinned sisters can't get away with.
That's true.
I've worn my hair short since I had my daughter, which is 17 years ago, right? And so I wear short, straight hair. I'm still part of the creamy crack generation. I love my perm. I keep perm in my pocket at all times.
Do what you do.
This is my summer hair. Every year I cut it off and let it get healthy again so I can creamy crack it back up all fall and along. But ultimately, I've never really gotten much ridicule around my hair. I've gotten it done, worn conservative styles, but I've also dyed it blonde.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the luxury that I have.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I sit in rooms where we make employment decisions and hair is discussed.
Okay.
So it is a thing.
Okay, hold that. We're going to come back to that. Kevin, I want to hear from you. We're just going to go down the line on this one.
So, no personal experiences
Of course,
with people
no.
critiquing my hair. But I do think it's fascinating. I mean, and that's part of, I'll just set that tone for this and why I have benefited from my role at EY for the last 6 years and am just privileged and honored to be on panels like this is just the education.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you that it's not something that we know about. I'll speak in terms of the white male and maybe just the white person in general. And similar to other topics that I've learned about over the years, it appears that everybody does have a story.
Yeah.
It is a highly sensitive area, and it's something that we probably need to get better about.
Yeah.
So that concept of education and enlightening us and being patient with us is just something that I'll kind of set the tone with for the day.
So did you just figure out it was a thing when I invited you to be on this panel?
No,
or had you kind of had a sense?
Well, so it was about a year ago. It was at our Emmett event. So that wasn't even a year. So it was about 6 months ago. And it was right around that time when I started hearing it more.
Okay.
A lady at our event actually mentioned a story where a young white guy in front of her, sitting in the row in front of her, asked her about her hair. And then EY, which I'm very proud of, we're a very progressive organization. I think in New York we had a panel on black hair. And Candra, I know, saw that as well. So, within the last 12 months, I've been somewhat educated.
Okay. And Herbert, what about you? Because I'm just going to keep it going down this line.
Yeah, so I went to the illustrious Hampton University, HBCU, and they even trained us there. So kind of similar to what Ashley was saying, it was from my own people. At Hampton University in the business school at the time when I was there, you could not have locks. They would not allow you to do so, right? And I know of different schools, Thurgood Marshall Law School, I believe in Houston, won't allow you to have locks to attend and be a part of there. And so it's always that thing of, and I think it comes from the older guard, the older generation of black people that we're preparing you to walk into this corporate space and be successful in it, right? And I'm halfway in with that. So just even my progression into the professional space, I'm like, nah, they tripping. You could go in. So when I started to grow my locks out, I've noticed that personally, right? Because my name is Herbert Smith. So you think of Herbert Smith, you don't think of me. I look really good on paper. And I would show up for interviews, and they're like, you Herbert Smith? I'm like, yes, let's do this. And you can see the shift of their perception of who I am and what was I capable to do just from me being a black male, then a black male with locks and all these things. So I saw it firsthand, as well as secondhand generations before me saying, don't you do that with your hair. So
yeah, thank you. And that kind of segues into the next thing is, have any of you on the stage had an experience where you were impacted or someone made a judgment based on your hair when it's in the workplace? Have you ever, just like Herbert said, he could tell the shift when he went into an interview? Have any of you ever experienced that? No? Not really? Okay. And I know, Stacy, you're from Oregon. It's a little different. And I think that's, too, what Herbert was saying about how our own people, and that's a thing that I think as well, we have to accept ourselves first. And I know that our baby boomers mean well, because they did grow up where you had to conform in order to get ahead, and so that they could blaze this trail for us. But I think it's time that we shift the conversation a bit. That's why, again, corporate hair, where authenticity meets executive presence, we need to shift the conversation to include our natural hair, but still in a professional environment, right? Doesn't mean you can still do whatever you want. So I think we'll kind of pivot here going into, the importance of really, like I mentioned earlier, having inclusion in this event, and Kevin kind of touched on it a bit, the education piece of it, because I feel like sometimes, again, we have these conversations amongst ourselves, we don't invite others, so they just don't know what the deal is, what the big deal is. So let's see, which one I want to start with here. What is it, for any of you on the panel that want to take this one, what is it for those that are not African American in the audience? What do you think is something important for them to know when it comes to our hair? Go ahead, Ashley, you're ready.
So here's the one thing that I will say. I think that we as African Americans are acutely sensitive to it. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to invalidate that, but I think we have to look beyond, as we're really talking about D&I, just black hair. Because it's not just black hair. I sit in these rooms where very high level employment decisions are made. And it's not just black hair, it's hijabs, it's head coverings, or all of anything that bucks the traditional notions of what corporate executive presence looks like. And I will tell you, in my personal opinion, executive presence is this nebulous term that has been created to exclude people and not include people. Because executive presence is really anything that the hiring manager finds it is. It's really a set of very nebulous attributes, and there are some things clearly that really fall in line with executive presence, right? There certainly is a way that you communicate when you have good executive presence. There certainly is a way that you present, but that presentation is not defined by how your hair looks or what you have on. It is kind of a package. It is kind of an ideal, and I think it tends to align with what the leader's ideal of what an executive looks like, and the culture of the organization. And so as we talk about this, I really think what we have to do is stop framing the conversation around black hair and start framing the conversation around attributing a look to a certain sort of attributes that then espouses to a certain level of credibility, right? Yeah. And when we start to unpack that, and when we start to say what an executive looks like is this why, as opposed to this why, what we'll find is that people aren't self-selecting out anymore, and we're getting diversity of thought in the workforce, and we're getting diversity of thought at the table. And the more diversity of thought you have at the table making the decision, the broader the spectrum becomes.
Right, and look, applaud that. And you're right, and it's not just, even though I'm focusing on black hair in the workplace, the more that I delved into this topic and was doing research, it really is something that impacts a lot of minority women. I even came across something interesting talking about a time where Asian women would do perms, curl their hair because they felt like it was too straight, and maybe if they put some curl in it, they just wouldn't look so Asian. Or there's all sorts of things that we experience, like I said, trying to fit whatever standard has been set in place very long ago for us. Did anyone else want to take that before I move on to the next question? I see you thinking, Ashanti, now.
I'm always thinking.
Oh, Kevin, go ahead.
I kind of wanted to piggyback on what she said. There was a time where I was a supervisor and we were interviewing. And there was an African-American woman that came in to interview. And, you know, afterward, we all like huddle up in the office and like, okay, so what did you think of this candidate? What did you think of that one? And there was one that I really liked in particular. And then the lady that was kind of like the pseudo mom, so to speak, of, you know, to the CEO. And she was like, I don't think she's polished enough. What do you mean she's not polished enough? The CEO, he really wouldn't respect her. If you could probably have her fly under the radar if you have her in this position. And I was like, wow, okay. And she was natural, but and that was like my first experience as a supervisor, you know. So it, like she said, that conversation about hair and she had a suit on. She had everything together. Her hair was, I guess her edges weren't laid enough. Yeah. So, you know, and that happens.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's all great points. One of my recommendations is around there's a time for specific, there's a time for broad, and I think some of the specifics of this topic draw a little bit of an audience. They raise some eyebrows. I think it's a progressive topic, and that's why I like it, because it's going to move the needle a little bit. But I agree, you don't want to get too micro-focused. I think in terms of that broader category of executive presence, I think it's an interesting time right now for that, because I think a lot of companies are defining and redefining that, including ourselves. So Ernst & Young is an example, a very conservative, highly conservative Big Four accounting firm, and we went jeans every day, and that was within the last couple of years. So that was and of course you don't have to, you know, you can choose what you want to wear, but we're searching ourselves, because we have, I mean, white, black, whatever. You got some of these kids coming in, some look better than others. So I think the topic is being approached and addressed more holistically, and I just think it's important that this subtopic has kind of its seat at the table.
So Kevin, while you have the microphone, I'm going to ask you this. I'll start with you. Why do you think that we struggle with these type of conversations? Because I know you're someone that you love to go for it, but why is it that you feel like this is a topic that is seen as kind of controversial, that we struggle to have these kind of conversations in diverse atmospheres?
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question. Honestly, I think there's a lack of education. If I talk about the majority, so the whites, or the majority of who we're talking about here, it is just a lack of education. So I would say that I would argue that 75% of the time when somebody tries to touch another person's hair, makes a hair comment, they have no idea the sensitivity. Right. So you almost have to kind of have this a little bit of a leeway until we're educated. If I was to do that, I wouldn't expect you to give me much leeway. But I think the majority doesn't have a clue, so it is part of this education. I think on the other side, it's like everything else in terms of minorities and them having a voice. And there's an amazing concept called covering. A guy named Dr. Kenji Yoshino wrote a book about covering. And all covering is just not bringing your true authentic self. Yeah. So minorities have a tendency to cover more because there's more of these sensitive topics and things that are getting eyebrows at work. So 80-90% of minorities will exhibit covering behavior. Yeah. A white male will do it about 50% of the time, which is interesting because we still cover. It's just not as much.
But not as much.
So you, I think you're probably not as comfortable bringing this topic up because it is such a sensitive topic. Yeah.
And I will say, you know, when it comes to hair, when I do wear my hair in its natural state, I have gotten the, can I touch it? Or, you know, someone reaching. Now, I will say personally, I've not felt like I've been approached in a situation or manner where I felt like it had malintent or, you know, I just haven't. But I do know that that's very sensitive, and a lot of people do not go for their hair. Don't ask unless you know them like that. For me, it's never been a big deal. But Shanti, I know that this is kind of your wheelhouse, because you said that you created the documentary. Can you just share with the audience, like, why is that such a sensitive thing for us?
Okay. In the movie, we have a section in there where there's a history. Black people used to be petted. There were zoos, human zoos, okay? The issue that I take is that, as far as the education goes, you wouldn't go up to a woman of another race and just touch her hair. You wouldn't do that. Why is it okay to do that to a black woman? Like, that should be like not a question. Like, why would you? I don't understand that part. I don't understand. Like, why do you need an education around that? And that's where the sensitivity lies. There's a unspoken, like, what is it called? Like, entitlement. Like, it's okay to touch a black woman's hair. It's not okay to touch any woman's hair without her permission. So, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I want to touch on a couple things, just going back to the history, right? For the African diaspora, hair has always been a thing of pride and a way to set ourselves apart in individualism and all of these things. It's our crowning glory, right? So, and now we're in such a space, especially in corporate America, where it creates a sense of insecurity and to be ashamed and to be shunned and all of these things, right? And it causes this separation from self-identity and self-pride in a way. So I'm glad that we're having this in the movie, and I do feel it's a shift just in general across all of those things. To more directly answer the question as far as the conversation, I'm of the belief that we're so afraid, particularly in America, to have uncomfortable conversations, especially with the people who are the focal point or who may be uncomfortable in that conversation, right? Particularly if it's whites against blacks or whatever be it, right? We're so afraid, but we don't really grow. The true growth and the true progression happens when you have those conversations, right? That's when we truly begin to understand one another and we can flourish. And I do believe it's from a place of ignorance, right? Because a lot of times I've been have conversations and I can see it's not ignorance. I try not to take anything, I don't take it, I try to take everything objectively. So I don't get upset or how dare she ask me that or try to, but understand they may not know and there may be no other way for them to find out unless I educate them. Yeah. So I always take it as a point of education. So I love your braids, okay? Or dreadlocks and all of these things. So let's break this down. The terms dreadlocks versus locks, and these are not braids, and all of these things, right? And then you can get into further conversations around Rastafarianism if they're, but it's so much culturally that we can express and educate our fellow co-workers or just humans, right? That we really have to take the opportunity to do so in these spaces instead of getting upset or instead of being afraid to ask the question, right? So that's my...
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's the biggest thing. Sometimes I feel like because it's such a sensitive topic, and for some of us, we feel that deeply that we miss the opportunity to educate because we're quick to get super offended and then create a barrier. When really, a lot of times, and I guess it's that unicorn in me, I just feel, I give people the benefit of the doubt. 9 times out of 10, I feel like it's just not something with bad intention. It's just an opportunity to educate. And that's why, again, we want to make this an inclusive environment so we can educate everyone. But moving into more, oh, no, go ahead.
Well, just real quick, the term empathy is amazing, right? I mean,
right.
Most people that believe in this type of stuff believe in that word. And I just think it's important for this example as amongst others. If a lot of it is the approach, and this is on my shoulders and it's also, I think, on your shoulders, right? So if I come up to you and I say, oh, your hair's different, you're probably gonna be pissed, right? Right? Day after, well, hold on. Okay, well, hold on. Yeah. But let me just say it the other way. So my education now for 6 years, right, a limited education, but an education would be, I know sometimes it's a sensitive topic, but I want to tell you, I know your hair's different and I like it and appreciate the fact that it, is sometimes a topic that maybe I shouldn't talk about. So if I approached you that way, I would assume that you would have a little bit more empathy in my approach versus the first approach. And there's ranges, right? Some people are going to have a scowl on their face. Some people are going to have a smile. And, but this is all about that. And I shouldn't be testing you because you're like the expert in this category. But you know, appreciate our own naivety and some of the intention. But it's also, I think, on my shoulders that I could approach the topic a little differently.
Yeah.
But it's because I know that it's an issue.
You know.
So I think it's interesting that you said empathy, because I think empathy is exactly what has to happen, but going both ways. And so when I say that, I think about it from this perspective. So I was working with a young lady just the other day, and she was saying, why are you always so together? Like, I have never seen you not be completely together. And I said, I would rather walk into the room and not have my presence distract about whether I'm credible or not. That's not the additional thing I want to have to deal with when I make a presentation about who I am, because what I recognize is that as an African American woman, my credibility is always in question. And I think sometimes when we have a situation where we're dealing with our white coworkers or people who don't look like us, they don't always think about credibility as something they build. They think about credibility as something that they have until they debunk that. And so for many Black people, we are walking into a space proving and building and trying to attain this place when we feel, whether it's true or not, because sometimes I think that's an assumption that we have, we feel like our white counterparts don't have to build to there. They're there, and then what they do from there either adds to or detracts from. And I think hair is one of those things, right? I think in many spaces as corporate women, we think, if I wear my hair a way, am I going to have to prove I'm more competent and capable and credible and I have executive presence, when I could just straighten it and have it not be one more thing I have to overcome?
I mean, not to belabor the point, but I think that let's not overlook the fact that it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting to have to be the person to educate. It's very, very tiring. And while I can respect that someone wants to ask questions and wants to know, tell me more about your hair, tell me why you do your hair the way you do it, it is exhausting. You're the 10th person in this week who's asked me this question. And now I'm having to explain and do this with kindness and empathy and love and all of this. That it takes a lot. And to the point of credibility. Like when you walk into a room and in my case, single Black female, and the only one in the room, I'm thinking about, and we had this conversation just before we started, I'm thinking about who's coming behind me. So how I respond to your question, how I respond to your behavior, how I respond to what you ask me, sets up the next person who walks in the room, right? So I leave the company, another Black female comes in, she's rocking locks, and whatever I have set forth becomes what they expect from her. So that's also a weight, right? And that's something that we carry. We don't talk about it. It's just something that we move through in life, but it's real. And we carry that around and we think about, okay, I got to think about who's behind me. But our forefathers did the same thing, right? They paved the way for us. And so we have to think about the woman who comes behind, the woman who comes alongside, how I act, how I behave, because I certainly wouldn't want a younger employee to see me act out because you're the 15th person to ask me, Stacey, did you change your hair today? Or you look at a photo of me and you're like, I didn't even know that was you in that picture. Really? It's me.
So
how many Black women do you know? It's me.
In the interest of time, because I do have a couple more things I want us to touch on. No, Stacey, keep the mic. I'm going to direct this to you too at the end. Because you're right. We do have to constantly answer the questions, carry this weight. Ashanti, you mentioned earlier about, other minority women, you're not touching their hair. I think to a point, typically other minorities, their hair is a little more similar. Our hair is just so unique. And so it's different. It's different than what they're used to seeing. So give me something really quick, just a quick bit of advice of what to do or what not to do. Should approach, ask questions, don't ask questions. Who do I ask a question to if I'm curious about their hair?
I think people have the wrong idea about me. I mean, the thing is this: if you say, like what you said, your hair is nice, I'm going to say thank you. It's different. Yes, it's different. I like to change it up. And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
I think it gets more offensive like when what was said about what it looked like or what's more sophisticated and not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can, and like she said, thinking about that woman that comes behind you, I think taken from it, it's okay to give a compliment.
Yeah.
You know, it's so, I mean, just treat us like
Just give
women.
it's
like,
nice. Your hair is nice.
Yeah, that's it.
It's kind of like when somebody asked me, mostly my people, because you know they know we do extensions, but it's kind of like when someone says, "Oh, girl, your hair, is that yours?" You know, just and then real loud in front of everybody. So just, you know, just if you like it, just say, "I like your hair. It looks nice," and let me go about my business, pretending. Stacey, you take it.
Really, think about who you know, right? It's all about relationships. And I think it's very pretentious to walk up to a perfect stranger and say, you know, tell me about your hair. This is an opportunity for people to learn how to get to know people who do not look like them. Far too often we're in circumstances where we hang out with people, we go to church with people who look just like us, and so it's easy for me to walk up to you and say, tell me how you had your crochet braids installed, and let me see. And we're quick to be able to do that with each other,
right?
Because there's an understanding, right? We just know these things about each other. If it's someone that I've never met before and I want to know, tell me more about any characteristic. Tell me more about the bindi and why is it a different color? I need to have built a relationship with that woman first before I start asking her questions about her culture, unless I'm doing a research paper. Like, I need to show some respect. I think that empathy works both ways. I like your point, Kevin, but I think it works both ways. I need to be interested in you and learning about you and demonstrate that I'm interested in your culture for just the purposes of learning, not because I feel like this is a petting zoo.
Right. Okay, so let's pivot a bit because I know we have a lot of leaders in this room. And so when it comes to companies, you know, like you said, Kevin, we are seeing more of a shift. The more that I researched into this topic, the more I understood it was a thing, because I remember when I first went natural, it wasn't a thing for me. For some people, it's a thing, you know, it's a process. For me, it was like, oh, okay. Like I took my sewing out one day and in my hair, you know, like, oh, let's see what goes home with this. But I was at Ernst & Young and I decided to wear my hair natural, and I did for a couple of weeks. And me, no one said anything to me, but I was super self-conscious about it. And I felt like, am I in this environment, am I going to be seen as professional? And I literally looked to news anchors as my inspiration for professionalism when it came to hair. This was before Demetria Olabor hit the scene. But I looked to them for that inspiration. So talking about companies, we talk about companies are big now. They use the key diversity and inclusion. We're creating culture, inclusive culture, yada, yada, yada. Bring your authentic self to work. But a lot of times we're still seeing that Black women, if they aren't able to bring their full selves to work, they're not happy and they're leaving companies at faster rates. So from a perspective of all of you who have been in leadership or are currently in leadership, have you noticed or do you feel like a lot of non-Black leaders hold maybe an unconscious bias towards Black hair? Does somebody want to?
I think it depends on where you are.
Okay.
And I think, so I'm going to say something probably. Y'all, all the Black women in the room probably going to be mad at me. But I'm saying it anyway.
Say it, I love it.
I think that you need to know as a Black woman where you are when you make these decisions. And I think you need to look at the culture of the organization, and you need to make a determination about whether that organizational culture aligns with your best self and whatever that looks like. Now, I will tell you, when I came to work at my wonderful employer, which is Catholic and not-for-profit, my hair was very straight. And I built a rapport, and I built my brand, and I built my credibility, and then I started wearing my hair curly. So now I can wear my hair curly, and it's not an issue, but I built and demonstrated before I made that move. I work for a conservative employer. They're great. Their D&I is on the radar of the CEO, and we are working really hard to be inclusive. But we are a traditional, old school corporation, and we just moved to jeans every Friday since I've been employed there.
Girl.
So that tells you, I think we need to stop trying to thrust who we are on organizations. I think we need to say, I'm good. I have a skill set, and my talent is valuable, and I'll take my talent where I'm embraced.
Right. And you said something to a point, and I'm going to let you guys continue on this topic. I read a statement somewhere that I loved, and the guy said, you know, you have to keep in mind that when you choose, because we all have a choice, when you choose to go work for a company, you are choosing to represent them and not yourself. So That is true, and that's one of the harsh realities. We'll get into that in a bit. And we also have to consider why I really want to have this conversation here is that we are in Texas. I love Texas. I'm a Texan through and through, but it's still a very conservative, traditionalist state. So we do still face some challenges there as well. But I'm gonna give one more. Did you take, Stacey? You want to take this? Did you want to answer this one?
I was just thinking about your remark about Texas. Again, I'm from Oregon, and Oregon's very, very liberal, but I didn't find, when I got here 13 years ago, I had a short afro, and I wasn't thinking about my hair when I went in for my interview. They flew me out here, I went to the interview, and people asked me afterward, did you straighten your hair? I said, no, I didn't think about it. Why would I do that? The woman who was on it was like 6 people on the panel. I got the job, but 6 people on the panel, she was more interested in my shoes than she was my hair, right? So when we talk about credibility and we talk about how we show up, my presentation is what mattered. Yeah. It wasn't my hair, and I wasn't hung up about what my hair looked like. I was hung up about, I need to make sure I have an hour with these people. I need them to know what I bring to the table, why they need to hire me, and move me from Oregon to Texas.
Yeah, okay. And so, last question on this topic, we'll move on. And Kevin, I'll start with you, and probably Ashley, and we'll move on unless anyone is burning to answer it. But is there a way for companies to address, let me read this one because I want to make sure I get it right. So how can companies create non-discriminatory dress code policies that reflect their brand? So they have a brand, they want to make sure they're reflecting that company and what their brand is, but they don't want to be discriminatory. How can we balance that?
It's really difficult. I think everybody has to have a seat at the table when you create that policy, which is not going to be easy. I mean, we have 10 affinity groups at EY, so I would start with every one of those groups has to be represented at that table. It has to be an open conversation, knowing that not everybody's going to get everything that they want. There has to be some give and take. I think the white male has to be a big part of that conversation. And then you have an added layer of complexity with a firm like EY, where we're very progressive and we're big on diversity. We're Diversity Inc. #1, a couple years ago. But that's within the confines of EY. Then we go out and we're a client-serving business, right? I mean, our people are serving clients. They're not serving EY. So I have to have this other layer of complexity around the clients that I'm serving, and there has to be this give and take. So it's almost I've got now 30 people at the table trying to input on the dress code, with a view of internal EY and external client, and that's where we have to be patient and realistic and realize that there's not going to be one answer, and it's probably going to take a while to really figure this out.
Did you? Ashley, you want to take it? Ashley, okay.
So we just did an overhaul of our dress code policy, and I think at the end of the day, we can put whatever we want to put on paper, right? It's kind of reflective of our culture, but we know there's this disconnect between what policy says and actually how we operate. And so here's what I coach other young professionals on. I say, don't dress for what you are today, dress for what you want to be. So take a look around. And if the CEO don't wear tennis shoes on Friday, on Jean Friday, then I suggest that you not. If we say professional hair and you don't see anybody in the C-suite or you don't see anybody at the director level with conch shells on the bottom of their hair, I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm saying that will the decision that you make get you where you want to be? And if the decision that you're making won't allow you to leverage all that you have to get where you want to be, then really probably you don't want to be that here, and that's okay. But then you find a place that aligns with your skill set, what you hope to be, and your authentic self. I'm not saying don't be your authentic self. I'm saying find a place that is receptive to that. So I think that's how we get there.
So Herbert, I want to ask you this because you already know how I feel about you and your presence, Lord. But what is some advice that you can give to young Black professionals coming up on best ways to keep their authenticity in mind, or keep their maintain their authenticity, but also exhort that presence, that professional presence?
Yeah, I think kind of touching on what Ashley said, know the space that you're in, right? Know what your company policy is, and even the unwritten policy beyond that, right? So I have locks. I have very long locks. They're always pulled back at work in some shape, form, or fashion. I'd never have them just out hanging or anything like that, just because I know I'm already kind of out there as is, right? So just understanding where you can kind of induct your individualism and authenticity of who you are and how you want to be creative in that way, but also understand where you want to go and how to get there and not jeopardize that in the same way.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just want to add one more thing. Sorry. Just in the last conversation, understanding too that as you ladies were speaking, that how much even me as a man walking into some of these spaces, I benefit or can be more comfortable where you might not be, right? And how much just even patriarchy plays into this, just because women are looked at as even more, than I would get. Like, I have the camaraderie with some of the guys and males in that corporate space that it can say, we can talk about sports and all these other things, and me build that sort of rapport with them where women might not be. So even understanding those situations, right? Like who's making these decisions from the C-suite level or the executive, and what's my relationship with him? What is he okay with? And all of these things is important.
Go ahead.
I wanted to give 3 tips to young professionals.
Please.
Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things, not just researching the company, but research the culture. How can I research the culture? There's a website called Pacer. I think it's pacer.gov. You can look up any pending lawsuits or anything on any organization. You can go to Glassdoor, check out all the reviews, and see if there's anything that's discriminatory, that other employees had to say about the organization. The last company I worked with, some of the people that were being interviewed, they actually interviewed people that worked there. They took them out to lunch. What is it really like to work at ABC Company? So those are some things that you do. Don't just research the numbers, research the culture. Also, my father-in-law, I have to give him credit to this. He said, who's in those corner offices? What do they look like? Do they look like you? Because more than likely, if they don't, then you're more than likely going to there may be some issues there. So those are my tips for young professionals. Research the culture of the organization before you, go in,
Yeah, okay, quick from you.
So really quickly, the other thing that I want to say about authenticity is this. I think we have to be cognizant as women where we have opportunities to pave the way for people behind us. Because I can guarantee you that there are some women who wore press and curls for 20 years so that we could wear our hair curly. Yeah. So I will tell you, it is worth it to me to wear my hair straight for long enough to have a seat at the table, because when that dress code policy comes across that table, I am sitting in that room and I can affect what is in that policy. So sometimes this whole quest for authenticity and individuality has to be sacrificed for the greater good. And I think part of being a leader is knowing when that is and making those sacrifices so that you can have that seat at the table to let there be a change for those who come behind you.
I think the point is it's not binary, right? It's not going to happen overnight. And that's, I love your point about the women's movement. So watch the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, right? The women's movement started 50 years ago, and we're not there. Yeah. We're not there. My own CEO, Kelly Greer, says we don't have equal gender parity pay at EY. Yeah. Okay, so we're not there after 50 years. And you could argue that there's various movements in history, obviously, but this movement in the workforce is really new. So it is going to take a while, and it's not binary. It's not going to happen overnight. I like the concept of sacrifice, but I also like the concept of we don't need to wear the weight of the world on our shoulders. Right. And it's not necessarily my fault or my responsibility, but it's somewhere finding that balance. I love what you're saying about, you've got the hair, but you keep it, somewhat in check at work. And the ultimate thing I love is what you said is, let's be patient and let's get a seat at that table. Yeah. Because then things can change.
Right. So I'm going to say this while I want you guys to think, because we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. So while you're thinking, if anyone has a question, what you guys said is so important, because the conversation that I've heard so many times is, well, you just need to work for yourself. You just need to be an entrepreneur. You just need to be this. Yeah, that's cool, but not everybody can do that right off the bat. Some people need to have a job, so what could we be doing while we're there to make it better for them that's coming up behind us, or that choose to work in that environment? So it is, we have to think, I think back on my ancestors, I think back on my grandmother, I think back on my mom and my aunts. They have had to do what they had to do to create and blaze trails for us. So how dare we be in a position where we feel like we shouldn't have to do anything for those behind us? We're going to always continue to blaze trails. And for women, in general, there's always this thing of trying to mask your sex appeal, how sexy you are. Then black women get it double standard because now we're trying to deal with our hair, our natural curviness, and everything else that we're having to try to cover, and it's exhausting. But at the end of the day, so was slavery. So is the civil rights. So I think we can deal with whatever we got to deal with in the boardroom to make sure that we're looking out for those behind us. So did anyone in the audience have a question for the panel? One up in the green shirt. You'll stand and make sure you tell us your name.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Shaditra Johnson from Essler. I work with Stacey Givens. Hey, Stacey. So I understand that we're talking about corporate hair and authenticity, but I'm interested to hear the panel's the thoughts on the school in Houston with having a dress code for parents and how, you know, these parents are bringing their authentic selves to, I don't know if people have heard the story about, you know, no do-rags, no headscarves in the school. The bonnets. But I'm interested to hear how, you know, how do we, those lines are so blurred and, you know, it's a very sensitive topic, but however, there's an appropriate time and place, but that's the same thought process that our executives could use to us. So I'm just really curious to hear how you guys, what's your thoughts on that?
So a friend of mine posted that on Facebook just the other day and asked what people's perspectives were. And I said, if they had pulled that when Barbara Jean was driving Stacey G to school and she had worked all night and she had her robe on and her scarf over her rollers, they would have got checked. Because she is a working professional, she's tired, and she's driving her child to school. It's a different story when you're walking into the school, shuffling around in slippers and a bathrobe. We see people do that in Walmart all the time, and we don't have any type of dress code about how you show up at Walmart in flannels and slippers. So my perspective is it's really different in terms of where they're showing up. If they're taking their child to the classroom or they're going to parent-teacher conferences and they're ill-dressed, that's one thing, but I'm just rolling up to drop you off and then I'm going back home because I got to work in 2 or 3 hours, that's a completely different set of circumstances.
So I am diametrically on the other side of this than my colleague. I don't think there's anywhere that you show up with a head rag on your head. Now, put an African head wrap on, put on a hat, but I don't think there is any place and time for a head bonnet other than in your bed. And I think that we are teaching our children, we are giving our children a disservice by modeling that behavior. You cannot go into the environment or out into the workforce, into the world, and anywhere and be taken seriously with night clothes on and a bonnet. So I am all for it. That is my personal opinion, and that's where I am on that.
And just to bring the two together, I think when I read it, I didn't think it, because I agree, like if I'm just rolling up and dropping off and nobody looking at me in my car, I think she was really referring to people going in and she's like, no booty, short, your cheeks hanging out. I mean, and it's a school. So that was the whole premise. So yeah, on that one. Anyone else have a question in the audience? We can do one more. Okay, right here.
I will come all the way around. My name is Davina Linguist. I work with CBRE, D&I recruiting manager. So my question is, especially when you are working with younger professionals, okay with the black hair, and I understand that, but especially when it comes to colored hair. And I'm seeing that a lot, and I'm like, where do you work? But the other side of that is, what is your advice? Especially, I mean, I can say, you know what, go work, you know, prepare for where you're going, not for where you're at. And it's about being taken seriously. So what's your advice when you are working with, you know, talent like that internally, and their complaint is, we can't get promoted? Well, you fuchsia today, blue tomorrow, green, you might be normal by the end of the week, but nonetheless, you see a lot of that, and it's just not appropriate.
I'm the HR leader who deals with this every day, so maybe.
I totally agree with you, and I feel like you can't go to someone else's house and move around their furniture. If you want to have blue hair, you need to have your own organization, you know, and do blue hair, purple hair Wednesday or whatever. So I totally agree with that. It's like the way that it's kind of weird. We're at a weird time because, you know, there is so much progression, but certain things I'm kind of sticking to.
One point on that. Yeah. So I do think that there's a level of appropriateness, and I 100% agree with you about if it's your company, you dress the way you want to dress, but you are, this is their brand, and determine what company you want to work for if you want to showcase purple hair. But I think that there's a balance. There are certain things that we can probably agree that there are behaviors that we can exhibit and ways that we can show up that would be viewed as inappropriate, and others can show up that way and it's not inappropriate. And I think that that's something that we need to be aware of, right? It is it's another weight, so to speak, that we have to just accept. Yeah. And it's very difficult to accept that. If we have tastefully colored blue hair, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. I have a colleague who is very, very skilled. She has purple hair some days, blue hair some days, but she's customer facing. And the company says she does her job, she does it well. So it's a non-issue. I'm not so sure that I would be able to get away with pulling that off. Although I've built credibility up to a point, I wouldn't even try it because I don't need anything that's going to tear down what I've already built up. It took me too long to get there, so I can't afford to tear that down by choosing to have blue or purple or green hair. So I just think it's something to be aware of, that not always, we'll see it with other folks. They do it, they get away with it, and we try that, and immediately we're like, oh, that didn't work for me.
So I think it's a great imperative to that is, you see sometimes somebody will have a skirt on above the knee. And on their body type, it's not disarming. It doesn't look any kind of way. Well, I'm thicker than a Snickers, so I can't pull that off at work, right? And so I think, you're right. I don't think everything applies to everybody. I do think, though, as we talk about hair, we actually just changed our dress code. No prohibition on hair colors. It used to be only naturally occurring hues. And then something happened. And that's what it used to be. And then something happened. We had a young lady come to work for us who had lavender hair. But it was the most beautiful lavender hair that we had ever seen. And it was like everybody was like, that is so nice. And she had on a gray suit, and it just looked so nice. And so it made my CHRO be like, you know what, I think we could probably loosen our reins a little bit, right? Yeah. And so we've set professional styles. Now, what you can't pull off is, magenta hair that's spiked with a bunch of gunk in it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we have to look at what's professional. I think we have to look at the order and the culture of the organization. And I think if people are unwilling to make those tweaks, then they really should find organizations who don't care. Because I have a good person that works at USAA. Oh, it is. It absolutely is. I'm the line at my organization, so I'm the final arbiter of that. And so the reality is we look less at the color and more at the style. And so it's one of those things where, and when I say style, I mean, does it look combed? Because you can clearly tell when somebody got up in the morning and didn't comb it at all. I say that of natural hair. I will tell you, I have historically not been a huge fan of natural hair for that reason, because I feel like not everybody has gotten to understand that natural hair has to be groomed and combed too. You just can't wake up out of bed with any style and just go. It has to be a level of maintenance. So my commentary is generally around, is it kempt? Is it not all over your head in a way that looks like you've not done anything to it?
Just real quickly, I think this is where the part of us being accountable for those who come after us comes into play, right? Because I've always appreciated where older colleagues, men and women, pulled me to the side like, hey, if you want to be successful here, X, Y, and Z, you need to do this, right? So if these women are coming in and I'd suggest, and I'm just a big advocate for, at the water cooler, hey, let me talk to you 5 minutes after lunch or something, and just tell them like, this is not probably successful for for what you're trying to go in this company, right? And just have that realistic conversation with them. And then just touching real quickly on the entrepreneurship. Regardless, if you're an entrepreneur, you're still working for the same somebody, whoever your client is. I know Black men and women who have gotten partners that are either white or male, right, for women, or, because clients respond better to either a male or a white person. Just because even working in, you could be fully together, hair and all, it's still, you're working for somebody, you still need to get those contracts.
He was saying give that feedback, but more importantly, be open to it, because I see a lot of complaints where someone is mad that somebody came to them with that feedback. You don't have to take their advice. You don't have to take any of that, but just be receptive to it, because when you're closed off to that kind of feedback, people stop giving it to you, and that's when you start hurting yourself. Go ahead.
I just kind of wanted to ask, and to piggyback off of what you ladies were saying, do you think that there, is certain things that is just a no? Or, because I'm a hairstylist where I've done certain things to people that work in the corporate environment that may have been somewhat, shave off a side. Well, I'm in the corporate, okay, well, you can shave it off or you can tuck it behind your ear, which one you want to do. The decision was to shave it off, and the question was made, oh, well, is this too unprofessional? However, when she went into that environment, because the cut fit her so perfectly, she was accepted into that environment. So do you think that there can be, like you were saying, the lavender that was so beautiful, is it possible to do a blue color that is just so gorgeous, or a purple color that's so gorgeous that it is accepted because, and that person has that, that personality that speaks professionalism?
I'm gonna give you the lawyer answer that I give. It depends. So I honestly say that it depends. I think it depends on the organization. I think it depends on the credibility that the person has already built with the organization. And I think it depends on, who their leader is and where they want to go. I think there are a lot of individual contributors at my organization who have wonderful hair and who do a great job in their individual contributor role. Nobody's going to bother them about that. But I can guarantee you, if they go to an interview to be a manager or a director, that will become an issue. Because what you can do on the floor in an individual contributor role where you're not forward-facing with clients, where you're not interacting with the sisters and the bishops, is very different than what you can do when you are in more visible, highly visible roles. So I think, you can. I'll tell you, that whole thing where it's shaved out off on the side, if I wasn't working in corporate America, I would have it, because I think it is bad. But I know I can't pull it off.
Yeah. So we got to move on, but here's what we're going to do, because if you just need to say something on that, I want each of you just really quickly, your final thoughts. We've already reached the end of this conversation and went by really fast. So a final thought or takeaway from this conversation that you want to share with the audience.
I think that business resource groups or employee resource groups at your company is a great place to start. If you have an affinity group, you have a black group, whatever it might be, start there and start talking with them about having these conversations within your organization and being able to get feedback directly from HR. If you know that you're trying to get someplace else in the organization and HR knows, you know what, there's some things that you need to know first, there's no point in you running down a path trying to apply for a position when HR can already tell you, hey, let me tell you, these are 3 things you need to do. Do this, this, and this. When you shift that, then you should be expecting, okay, I've made some changes, now I can move forward. So those are the 2 things I would suggest. Tie in with your business resource group, and absolutely tie in with your HR business partner, because they are the people who are going to help guide you and help you through your career. That's what they do. Put them to work.
I would say definitely, be your authentic self. With that being said, just know where you're going into, and just to piggyback, keep that in mind, that this is the CEO started that company and he wants to be represented the way that he or she does. So just keep that in mind, but also there's other opportunities out there, if you don't fit in at one place. I'm testament to that, so.
2 things. 1, find a mentor. Find lots of different mentors in different places and different spaces in life. I think they're the best sounding board. They've been where you're trying to go, and so I think that's helpful. And then 2, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Coco Chanel. It's one of my absolute favorite quotes. And she says, dress impeccably and they remember the girl, dress shabbily and they remember the dress. And I say apply that to your hair, because I think it's something that really resonates, and it's an old quote, but it absolutely is the truth.
I think really the 2 things, and I touched on one of them is going to be patience. So I just want to reiterate that this is a long journey. It's going to be a long journey. I personally have no patience, and Candra knows this. So I'm trying to give this advice outside of myself. And the other thing is around, picking battles. I think a lot of what we're hearing tonight is around, finding that middle ground, seeing both sides of things, words like empathy. We do need to pick our battles. I could tell you, at least at EY, and I think at a lot of companies, this is a hot topic. So you're in a situation, and I tell people, I'm not bashful to tell people like this, if you are a good performer and a high performer, you will progress in our organization. So let's ride that wave and that momentum and pick our battles, because I don't want some purple mohawk that's spiked with gunk, as you said, to get in the way of that, right? Because I mean, I could see what your future looks like the next 15 years, and I could see that you might be a partner at this firm. So let's pick our battles and minimize the things that are going to get in the way of that.
I'll just say, your hair is your crown. Wear it as free and authentic as you will, within reason. And understand if you go too far, you may jeopardize, or you risk the perception of you being one thing when it may not be. That's just the world we live in. And I'm a big advocate for finding out the culture. I think someone here said, find out the culture. Tap those older people within the organization and say, hey, is this okay? Can I do this? F, Y, and Z. And then also, advocates. Find a sponsor or an advocate within your company. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mentor, which is a closer relationship, but somebody just advocates for you in those rooms where they're deciding who gets the promotion, who gets this X, Y, and Z, right? Yeah. Build those relationships, and then you have the room to be more free in you.
Yeah, thank you guys. And just to kind of sum up what I've learned and what I've gathered from this conversation, this experience in general is, one, I want you guys to know that you do not have to style your hair from a straightened state in order to be seen as professionals. But the key word is you do need to style it. So that, but depending on your environment, right? So be aware of your environment, build the relationships, have the mentorships, be open and receptive to feedback. You don't have to take it or accept the advice. Be open to it though, and just develop your presence, because when you have that presence, you really can pull off a lot of things. But as my good friend John over here likes to say, not everybody can wear everything. So there's some things that some people can do. There's a lot of things I cannot do, y'all. I cannot wear braids. For the life of me, I will look like Ice Cube's girlfriend on Friday. It just doesn't work. It doesn't matter what I do. But just having some self-awareness and perspective, and having those people around you that can help guide you, because we all need that guidance. And I think as millennials, barely millennial, we sometimes feel like people should, or things or organizations should bend to us a lot of times. And there's some harsh realities that we have to deal with and we have to face and just accept. But you guys, I want to thank my panelists, if you guys, and just give them a big, huge round of applause. I'm sure you've enjoyed this as much as I do. You guys have been great. I strategically went after each one of you because they're diverse in race, gender, and also in viewpoints. And I think you guys gave a great, well-rounded perspective on this topic, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you again. So the last couple of things that I want to make sure we do, you guys are all here for this conversation, but I took advantage of this conversation because I knew it was a hot topic and leveraged it as a fundraiser for Assuring Love Child Placement Agency. So each of you being here today is contributing to that. And I want to bring up the founder of Assuring Love, Lyle Mathis, just to give a couple of minutes just to share with you guys what it is and why it's so great.
Well, smile. I like to talk. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Assuring Love, but I have to mention some on the topic. Y'all were off the chain. But there's three things that are pet peeves of mine, and of course, I have employees, right? And I deal with a lot of foster kids. I'm tying into Assuring Love. I deal with foster kids all over the Metroplex, and that's hair. Because I know I've had an employee come to the office. Is that called a bonnet? Yeah. The bonnet? And I almost told her, you might as well pack all your stuff up and head on back to the car and go ahead and put in that resume to another organization. Be your best at all time. God bless you with this body, with this temple, and respect it and love it. Amen? And you'll go a long way. But Assuring Love Child Placement Agency, we are all about helping these babies that have been removed from their home, not by their will. And so we are raising funds to help out with clothing. We're raising funds to help out with school supplies. Some of our girls are going to the prom, and we want them to look good. We want their hair, may it be natural or processed, however they want to do it. We want them to look good. We also want to raise funds. In the state of Texas here, they're moving towards removing transportation to take these babies to visit with their parents and with their siblings. So organizations like mine, we have to figure out how we're going to transport all these babies. And so we have to hire transporters, and we transport all over the Metroplex. So funds from you will help us do those types of things so that we can reconnect families. And so I'm just really blessed and thankful to be here, and y'all did good. I just want to give you a thumbs up again. I have been in all of your seats before. That's why I'm no longer in corporate America. It is so tough. Lord, but thank you.
But what he does is tougher. Yeah. And also just to share a little bit about Lau, he also was a foster parent initially, right? And then you adopted 3 boys, 3 brothers. So, and then he ended up going into and he ended up going into that, the profession for himself. So I am a supporter of that. I have been learning more about fostering, and that's something that adoption has been on my heart for years now. But this is my opportunity to learn more about the challenges, and it is challenging. And one thing I appreciate about Assuring Love is that it's the child, of course, but also supporting the families, because being a foster parent, what I'm learning is not easy. Like, there are a lot of challenges that come with that. And I encourage you all, if it's something that you ever thought about, or if it's something on your heart, to look into it. They do free trainings. If it's something you've ever thought about or interested in looking more into, there's a lot of children that need loving homes, and there's a lot of loving faces in here, so I'm just saying. But we're almost finished here. I want to make sure that I acknowledge, because again, this event would not have been possible without you guys purchasing tickets and being here and being present for this, but also our lovely sponsors. So we have Natural Hair, the movie, which is on the panel, and also they are sponsoring our videography. We have our photographers, Jermaine Eden and DS Photos, right? Shots. And then we also had food sponsored by Smokey John's, Services of Hope, Transformance. Services of Hope and Transformance also donated some door prizes, as well as Smokey John, so we'll get to that in a moment. Curls, which y'all know the ladies are back there in the back, they donate these lovely full-size, lovely products, so make sure you got your bag. Southern Hospitality Treats. So when you guys get this food, when you leave here, but also she was just a little late, so now there's some treats over there for you guys to enjoy, as well as donations in dollars. Oh, Pelican House donated food. Be Polished Beauty Supply, which is a Black-owned beauty supply store that just opened in January in Arlington, and she donated some of the products that you'll find in your bag. And then we have donations, Floyd Green Productions, our DJ, and Barbie Productions, my mother. Those are actually my parents and the sponsors of my life as well. So they're here, as well as my aunt back there. So they are the sponsors of my whole entire life. And Occasions Weddings and Events Venue, which is located in Cedar Hill. So I appreciate all of you guys. I want to acknowledge my volunteers. Sherry, which was my right-hand man, the person that I called with all of my issues, and she just will listen to me and let me vent. And my friend Brittany, who was just supposed to be attending as a guest, but of course as a friend just stepped in anyways. Chad Harrigan over here. Dee, they've been working the audience for me. Sylvia, Crystal at the registration table. Maya, just doing whatever it is I need her to do. And then my Aunt Lisa, who just said, hey, I'll ride with you, and didn't know that she was going to be put to work. So, did I miss anybody? Did I miss any volunteers? Please don't let me miss the volunteers. But I appreciate all of you guys. This is something I tell people, you know, this probably could have been even bigger and better, but I underestimated the effort, because I've done this plenty of times before, as Kevin knows, but I did it for a company with their money and their resources and their creative services. But it's a totally different ballgame doing it on your own. So I want to thank the people that have dealt with me through this process, and to my panel again, y'all have been absolutely amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better panel, and you guys were absolutely amazing. And so, call to action, you guys. I just want to ask that you share your thoughts, continue the conversation, share your thoughts online with your friends, share this experience, hashtag corporate hair, hashtag everyday executive, follow everyday executive. On Facebook, it's just everyday executive. On Instagram, everyday_executive. And just keep it going, keep the buzz, because that's another way to bring some more light to our lovely sponsors as well. And just FYI, we do have to be out of the venue. You'll have some time to mingle, get some more food, but we do have to be out by 8. So what I did was set up some space at Matito's, which is just right across the courtyard. I know it's Monday, so that's why I want to be respectful of your time. So if you have to jet out, thank you for being here. If you have somebody you want to connect with or want to keep the conversation going, I'm going to have a couple of drinks. And so you can meet me at Matito's over there if you so choose. And you guys, that's it. We're done. Thank you so much for being here.
What is that?